Hello, I'm Alex,
I'm John.
and this is Tech Society Declares Holy War. So yeah, what pisses you off?
Well, what pisses me off is that I'm almost 56 years old, and I've been in the workforce since I was 15, and there's some shit that's still not sorted out that should have been sorted out by now when it comes to women, work, leadership and society. So I get increasingly pissed off about the inequity that women face.
And the lack of progress, it seems.
100%.
Right.
And not just women like me who are middle-aged. I am going to live to 110. Middle-aged, white, and educated. There are women who have so many more barriers than I do. Women of colour, First Nations women, culturally diverse women, disabled women who just experience disastrous lives because we don't pay attention. And when I say we, legislators, policymakers, leaders don't pay attention to their lived experience. So second-class citizenship for women pisses me off.
Great, Conrad.
I think that's good. It's hard to disagree with that. And so in that vein, it is that we've been banging on about this for such a long time. The evidence is there, and it gets very little respect a lot of the time. It's robust. It's detailed. I spend a lot of my time in economic and business data. It's just overwhelming how much evidence there is around.
So why do you think nothing's been done?
So my view is that the only way to make change is through crisis, and that crisis hasn't been. I think that about everything.
So all women should strike.
Yes, honestly, I don't think that's a terrible idea. And so, but it is one of those things that the case has been made in a very here to help you sort of way, and here's the opportunity rather than.
You mean?
Well, it's not. No, I wouldn't say paternalistic, but it's kind of been like here's the supportive answer for you. Here's the hand-holding answer for you. You can do it from here. And it's actually getting, in my mind, to a point where it's like, let's get the heat has got to be turned up because, action is slow and it takes a fair bit to galvanise real change. And, worst of all, the thing that really pisses me off is that a lot of change within institutions, be that workplaces or in government or wherever, is left to an individual. And that individual is usually one of the more senior women in the organisation, and it's just like, oh, that's her project. She's going to fix gender equality for us.
They create a diversity department who...
They don't even do that.
No, giving to someone as part of a stretch role. Or
yeah.
Run off and do that. That'll be good for you.
Can you run this business unit while also fixing this for us? And it's just like
weekends kind of thing.
Yeah. You can deal with that, and don't worry about it. We'll send you to all the lunches and breakfasts that are there, but we won't actually give you any capacity to do it. That pisses me off.
Because the real solution they want is someone up on the stage saying we care about diversity.
They want the PR solution.
But they don't actually care about the actual solution.
No, and you're right, Conrad. There allegedly isn't a burning platform. So I agree, and particularly in Australia, and with our look, I don't think any. I'll be non-partisan here. I don't think there's any.
Oh, there's no room for bipartisanship on this show.
Well, there's honestly there is no one party or group that can hold its head up high to say we have really made inroads, because we're here. I've been in the workforce 40 odd years. I was a small child when Gough Whitlam came to town, came to the prime ministership, met him when I was 8 years old. He made significant changes, but the beginnings of changes in 1974 for women, and we've seen nothing radical since
He scared
then.
all the establishment, right? He spoke truth to power, which I think gets you killed by the Queen. That's what happened to him, right?
Yeah, well, yes, he was killed by the Queen, and
I
a
think
whole bunch of other stuff.
There was actually a CIA project as well.
Well, I don't know, but Gough didn't do himself any favours either,
Yeah.
and I am a Gough Whitlam fan, so let's be out there. But So there's allegedly no crisis. And there is a crisis because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women die every year as a result of gender inequality. More are harmed physically, sexually, emotionally. And, the Annabelle Crabb quoted in her book, The Wife Drought, some years ago, that if up to 100 men were dying every year from shark attacks, we'd drain the frickin' ocean. Now, up to 100 women. So in fact, it's more than that because it's nearly, it's 1 to 2 women a week are dying at the hands of predominantly men, and there's no crisis. So riddle me that.
What do you think of the hashtag not all men?
I think it's complete bullshit because not all men, not all women, whatever. I mean, all lives matter. What a load of crap.
Yeah. Because the point isn't that all men are violent, which is stupid.
Absolutely not.
But the ones who aren't violent should be doing more, right?
That's literally the whole point. And it's so simplistic to come back with something like that, and it's deliberately disingenuous a lot of the time. It's not uncommon when you go into workplaces and deal with these issues that's either those words and that hashtag are used or versions of it, and it's shit stirrers who do not mean well, or do not care, or do not think that this is actually these are actual issues that need to be dealt with,
unless they pretend to care, right? So I want to ask you about corporations and virtue signaling in the space of gender equality. So do corporations just do it to show that they care, but they don't really?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. This is common, right? This is
it's far too common.
Yeah. It's like that's not a shocking thing to say. You can say it on a whole manner of issues.
Does that devalue the whole movement?
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask.
Is it still worthwhile?
My view is that it's not useless in its entirety because it recognises that there is something that they should be doing. And a lot of the time that I've found when I've had hard conversations with organisations to be like, you're just doing this for PR reasons. And when you walk in external to an organisation, you don't really care if they're going to continue to be their client, if they're going to continue to be your client. You can actually I have found that I'm happy to have that sort of conversation with people. But a lot of the time, the vast majority of the time when it comes across as a PR thing, and a lot of the time they don't realise that, I'll give them that, but they don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. They're just saying that their competitors are doing it. And it's a bit like, well, that's not the most helpful place to start. Think about what the issues are, and they're not well versed in what's actually going on.
And coming back, so circling back to something you said at the start, so there's 2 points I want to make. So Conrad, or John, you asked Conrad, what's getting in the way, or why doesn't it change? Well, there's a real, we've got to talk about power, and we've got to talk about leadership. So I want to talk about leadership first. We as a society have a relatively narrow view or avatar or persona of what leadership is. And as part of that, there's a whole bunch of behaviours. So, if you... I say to sometimes in my classes, close your eyes, picture a CEO. Now stand up if that wasn't a middle-aged white guy who's straight.
And tall. Don't forget tall.
Tall, true, and called David. But anyway.
Or Jack.
Yeah, well,
Mark.
No,
yeah. Single syllable name.
David, Andrew.
Nice,
Conrad's
strong
done
single syllable name.
some good work on that. So we all have those mindsets. So, but we've also got a very fixed view about what leadership is. So when we're thinking about leadership, we also think about people who have, getting there is powerful. When have we seen, in the context of the way we view leadership, someone willingly give up power? And so that's a conversation that you have to say, is this, and it is playing into the zero-sum game a little bit, but this is about power, and it's about the way we define leadership. And I think we've got to break down a whole bunch of stereotypes around what leadership really is. And then to Conrad's point around virtue signalling and the PR thing, you might want to start doing it that way. But if you're a really great leader, you're going to care a lot about the people, the humans that are in your workplace.
Correct.
You're going to really care about what works for them first.
Yeah.
And when that happens, You don't have to worry about virtue signalling, PR, what have you, because you will have a really terrific workplace that works for a whole bunch of people, including women. So this is all, it always gets back to leadership, always.
And, you will want that and you will work for that.
So what happens to the old guard who don't want things to change?
Or don't care.
They don't care. They like it the way it is.
Well,
and this is how things should be.
They haven't gone anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
They're still there. Nothing's actually happened to them. They haven't been punished. They haven't been forced out. And I'm not saying that those are the solutions, but it is.
But they're also
that's
getting
the fear.
rewarded. They're still getting rewarded for those tropes around leadership that we see and hear. So they're still getting rewarded. That's why they're not going anywhere.
What about when people are constantly being fed this narrative of political correctness gone mad? Is that damaging the movement? Is that just the death cries of the dinosaurs?
It is the death cries of the dinosaurs. I think that is a good phrase to use there.
What about
but what does it mean? Like, what does political correctness gone mad mean? Because to me, it's just been used so much over the past, for my entire life. And it kind of means nothing now. And I know people of my generation, you would say kind of largely under 35, it's not a phrase that we really understand because it literally has been beaten to death.
It's just used to dismiss.
It's kind of like, okay, mum and dad, thanks for using that phrase, but it kind of means nothing. Like, because it's a throwaway line. It's, it's crap. So when you actually think about it, it's kind of like, well, that's completely hollow. It's a straw man argument as well. There's no meat to it. And so, and also the people who try and throw that line around, they're the sort of people who are, they fear anything that is not what they can control or know right now. That's been my experience. Because nobody likes change.
No.
Yeah.
That's like just one thing that we've actually got to start talking more about.
And if you're part of the status quo, it's nice, right?
Don't want things to change.
Yeah. I mean,
it's nice and comfortable.
But I also kind of sit there and say that most people, like, change is hard work.
Yeah. Most people live in the present and fear the future, right?
I wouldn't say they necessarily fear the future, but yeah, they live in the present. So yeah.
And as a straight white male, it's there's benefits.
Well,
right?
coming back to the PC stuff, 100%.
Yeah.
You live a very different life to me, my friend. And
I have no idea the struggles of anyone who's not me.
But you can learn about them. You can invoke the empathy gene.
I think that's a really important point.
This is at the heart of all this is heart. And one of the questions I pose often in fact, I was with a group of 50 people only 3 weeks ago out in Ballarat somewhere, and predominantly men in the manufacturing sector. And I said, I want you to think about the most vulnerable woman in your life. And it might be your nana, your mum, your wife, your kid, whoever it is. Now, I want you to think about her entering your workplace, unaccompanied by you, and no one knows that she's part of your family. And she's going to go and sit in the lunchroom on her own. Now, tell me how comfortable you really, really now, dig deep, how comfortable are you that she would have a great experience, or what don't you know? And I want you to think about that because there's someone else's mum, nana, daughter, niece, whatever, walking into workplaces every single day. Yeah. So if you can't answer that question with hand on heart going, I am so 100% sure she's going to have an awesome experience that is respectful, we've got work to do. But it's that empathy gene. We've got to get it going.
That's all it comes down to is respect.
What do you do about that creepy work colleague you have? He's
not going anywhere.
Yeah, maybe he's even a little autistic. Maybe there's something else going on there, but he can't be trusted alone with young women. Now, what do you do? Do you fire that person? Do you?
Firing is always the very last resort, and nobody likes doing it, and nobody should like doing it.
Well, there's the quarantining approach apparently, which you can physically quarantine.
Isn't that just segregation, though?
Yeah. But the thing is that. In the same way that I said that organisations don't realise that they're just doing a PR game, a lot of individuals don't know that on the first conversation that they actually don't realise that they're being pretty awful. And, you know, it's the first thing that I always recommend that people to do is to actually map out a conversation that you're going to have with them and give this specific example. So rather than saying you're creepy, well, that's actually not very helpful, but to say, hey, did you know that such and such found when you did X really uncomfortable? I think it's not the first time that you've done it. Is everything okay? Did you even realize this? And that's
empathy with the creeps too.
It's respect all around because because if you start with the idea that they don't realize what they've done, give them the benefit of the doubt, then you will actually start to build a mutually respectful relationship.
And I think that's really important. Begin with good intent. Seek the greatness out in the other person, even if you think, you know, oh my God, here comes Creepy John again, but, you know.
It's me.
Okay, so Creepy John has never had the benefit of that conversation.
Yes, yeah.
So let's and it's like any performance issue.
John's actually very respectful of women. I just want to make that clear.
Excellent.
I am.
Excellent, and not creepy at all. However, this is people leadership 101, right?
Yeah. I want to go
the problem.
I want to go in another direction now. John and I are members of a private club called Mellow House, which is very inclusive and a hip new private membership club. We love it. We recently talked to the people who were trying to revive the brand of the WA Club. Oh, yeah. Which is famous for being men only. Actually wasn't for like the last 11 years of its life or something, but
people don't realize.
Famous for that. Now you have the Karrakatta Club, which is women only. Yeah. Now at what point...
The World Club still exists, which is men only.
Are these segregated clubs, segregated gyms? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it we don't know yet? Or what's your feeling on these safe spaces? I guess you could say.
That's it though. It's the safe space. Now, I'm not going to talk about men-only clubs because I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with it. And guess what? You might have noticed I'm not a man either. So I'm not going to talk about the lived experience of men. But what I can talk with great authority on is the lived experience of women. And because women have been in a minority and also are considered...
Minority of power, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But women are in a minority in a whole bunch of different places. Workplaces, you've just only got to look at the statistics across Australia. We are still in a minority except for certain occupations. Yep. There's a lot of energy that I use up being in a room with men and being the only woman. Being the only and the other. So I'm a woman. I'm also a gay woman. So I've got some stuff going on that makes me really hyper conscious of assimilating and fitting in.
And now you're representing both of those groups, right? So you do anything and some dickhead might say, well, that's why we don't invite women to these things, right?
Well,
Whereas I go do anything and I'm just responsible for me. I'm not representing the entire male gender.
But there's also, I think, getting back to the women's groups, though, or women-only groups, until such time as we can hand on heart say that there is equity, that there's equality and representation, and that workplaces in particular, because that's where I focus, where workplaces are not dominated by one gender or one demographic, then we need people to have safe spaces to be themselves and to be fully present. So for me, as a gay woman, certainly earlier on in my career, did a lot of masking. I wasn't entirely, I was out, but not entirely out. Do you know what I mean? And so I would do a lot of masking, my partner, and do vague references and downplay a really important part of my life.
I like to say my partner just so people wonder.
Well, we're also talking about 20, 25 years ago. So the times have moved a lot, but for me, there's a lot of it's energy giving for me to be in a room with my female peers because I'm not having to put on the armour or work out how to assimilate or work out how to mask to a degree. Now, I'm being over 50, my filter is starting to really,
It's run out.
You're like, do I look like I give a fuck kind of
Pretty
level?
much, much, yeah. So the give a fuck-a-meter is nearly broken. So So I have less concern about that now, but there's still energy that we use. So there's real value in providing particularly marginalised or underrepresented groups their own space to hang together because it doesn't take the same energy. So whether that applies for men's groups, I don't know.
I think it's an important point. I don't have a huge aversion to demographic specific groups. Like, I think you kind of have to judge it on itself rather than just saying a principle no. But what I would say is that there's a huge strength that often comes from those sort of groups, and they're the ones who are able to drive to support each other a lot of the time, and to be a place where you can actually have those really candid conversations and say, this is what I'm dealing with at work, this is what I'm dealing with at home, and how is anyone else dealing with this, and how can you help? But like, even if you don't engage with these formally, there are lots of book clubs that are single sex. There are lots of sports groups that are single sex. And so it is kind of those sort of things where it's like, well, all right, so I might not be a member of the Harakata Club or the World Club, but, I engage with sport groups, and I've got a book club, all of those sort of things. It's pretty homogenous, and so so people go find those in other ways, and so it's a changing thing.
Yep, that makes sense. What about women themselves? Do you find yourself like having to preach to women as well, or are they the choir now?
No, not entirely.
No, definitely not.
We every single one of us as human beings hold mindsets about women.
Oh yeah, that's why. Like Hillary Clinton struggled, right?
Well, she,
in 2008.
So much to delve into there, but so women. It's interesting because I have this conversation a lot. I've just done one of my boring podcasts,
Not this
one, about the queen bee, or the bitchy woman, the catty woman, because it would come up at every single speaking gig that I have, particularly in women-dominated audiences. And I thought, what do I do about that? And why is it so? And I said, well, so there's a couple of things going on here for me, in my not so humble opinion. A lot of women are expected to do a lot of stuff for the greater good. And I said, so have we ever thought about if she's being an asshole to you, or she's known as being not great with other women, how many men do you say, well, he's not very nice to other men? And he's a bit of a bitch to other men. No, we don't say that. So it's very gendered. Because we have an expectation about, again, these narrow parameters of how genders should behave, and women fall into that as well.
I think that's right. I would say that in my experience, I can't even name like a queen bee type figure that I've ever seriously come across. The perception has been there, but the substance hasn't. So I kind of largely just think it doesn't really exist that much. What I would say, however, the bitchiest people I know are 50-something white guys that wear suits on St George's Terrace in Perth, or George Street in Sydney, or Collins Street in Melbourne, and they can be highly emotional people who, frankly, and I've seen this many a time, scream down the hallway at each other when they don't get their way. So the idea that there's a special type of person out there who, and it happens to be a senior woman who's not supporting other women and stuff like that, I've just substantively never seen that. I have seen men act like awful people in the way that those women are being characterised.
And so, but it comes back to a couple of mindsets again. So I have a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. So because the work that I do, there are some of us, there are a lot of us doing that work, but there's a lot of work to be done. So I think that there's an enormous amount of work to be done. So I don't have any particular, people say, what's your competitor analysis like? I don't know. I don't do it. I just get on with it. There's a really big problem to fix here, right? But if we think about people in power who've had the struggle, right, to get there, to ascend to power, they may well have a mindset of scarcity, which is, I've
They
got
had
to
to
protect.
work really hard to get
I've
there.
had to work hard to get here. I've had my pointy elbows out. And you know what? If I had to do it tough, they have to do it tough. Now, men think that and women
Isn't that
think
the
that.
junior doctor syndrome where the
Absolutely.
senior doctors shit all over them because they had that experience?
That's what I went through.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, great. But like also like, the actual structure of workplaces is quite literally a pyramid. There are lots of people at the bottom and there are very few positions at the top.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't like that. There are different ways that you can do these sort of things, but it is largely the approach that organizations take. A lot of people think that they want to be at the top. A lot of people shouldn't be at the top. But then also, like, the closer you get to it, I had someone say to me the other day that they've just started, they're about a year into sitting on the executive committee of their organization. And they said, I didn't realize how much I didn't trust my colleagues to do the right thing. And that's their immediate peers. And I was like, damn, that is so true. But the closer you get to the people making the decisions, the more you realize that they have no idea as well.
I wear that entirely on my sleeve. I tell everyone, like, I don't have a fucking clue.
Yeah, and I'm pretty open about that as well.
I'll go this way.
Yeah. And it is, and there's a lot of gut decisions that are made, and I think it takes I'm exactly the same. It takes both an element in my mind of confidence and naivety to be able to say that, because I'll say it in the inappropriate context or with people you shouldn't, but it is one of those things where you just you need to realize that nobody has a really good idea of what they're doing, and a lot of people are figuring it out as they go along. And if you think that someone's got it figured out and they're planning ahead, just ask them about their career and how they ended up where they are, because most of them, it's a huge accident.
Yeah, and it's been non-linear and and the really great leaders that I see are the ones. I spoke to a woman called Cheryl Morrison Deutsch this morning. She's the CEO of Zillion. We were referring to her off air, and she said, we're a high growth company, and I have high trust in my people. I don't know it all, and I tell them that, but I surround myself with the people who do know it all, and we've got to make mistakes because
you've got to outsource your shortcomings.
100%. Yeah. And but those. I guess it's that again. I'm coming back to what are these characteristics? Because if we're going to give a playbook to people, because we're talking about the people who can make the change. You can talk very in a very esoteric way, or let's say so this is the one thing you can do, John. This is the one thing you can do, Alex. Think about this. So, how much do you trust the people around you?
To have the answer as well. Like, there's a reason you hired someone. You don't hire them because you just want to give them some money to sit in your office and make you feel good. You hire them because you expect them to do something. Yeah. So, you just kind of got to sit there and think, you chose that person over, and there are lots of applicants for jobs at the moment. You chose them over, it might be a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe 100 people that also applied. Well, you might as well use them, and they want to be able to do stuff. Like, it's actually not a complex sort of thing to wrap your head around, and the idea that they come to you expecting that you know everything actually isn't right. I've got someone that a client of mine who every time that a staff member comes to them with a problem, they expect them to have Googled it and come up with at least 2 or 3 options on how to solve it. It's actually not that hard, and also they're just really annoyed at staff who come up to them and say, "Here's my problem." They're like, "Well, do you really expect me to know the answer? If you can't solve it, what hope do I have?" And the answer is generally out there. You can actually find something, but you do have to look for it sometimes. So
Now you brought up a few interesting points here, but you just touched on something that I've been thinking about, which is meritocracy. Now, you said that you've hired someone out of the hundreds of applicants.
Yeah.
Now, we're in the tech sector. We've talked about this with you, Michelle.
Yeah.
I think about 1% of our applicants are women, maybe less. I think we've had 2 in the history of our entire business.
No. There's actually been a steady increase. I mean, not by huge amounts.
Yeah.
But apparently, but there's an opinion out there that meritocracy is not enough. We should be doing more to bring women into the workforce. Now, is that the responsibility of a business?
Well, merit's bullshit for a start.
See, I disagree. I actually believe in merit.
But merit is what is merit? It's actually
that's the question.
We talk about the not all men and PC. But this is another thing that gets banned. Well, we just appoint on merit. Well, okay, you tell me about what is meritocracy from your perspective, or meritorious from your perspective.
So that's what Conrad mentioned, right? He's like, they can do the job, thus we hired them.
Yes.
That's what it means.
Shouldn't we always hire the best person?
Well, but okay, so just quickly on merit, there's so many things here. What the thing about merit is that you've actually got to define it. You can't just walk around and say we hire on merit. Well, yeah, duh. I hope so. Like, I don't want you to hire on incompetence. It's actually like that's actually not a revolutionary thing to say, but you need to be able to define very clearly, and also not just explain to the people in a job application form, a job description form, but to people externally what that merit is.
What you were testing for.
Yeah, because like that's a very low bar.
Well, then you can control the story, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
the whole point is you can then change the story as it suits. And
How do you solve? Because I wish we had a female programmer. I really do.
Yeah.
Just to add some actual diverse opinions on the actual craft of programming. But where we struggle is that the big companies all have an actual quota.
Yeah.
So they have to have this amount of female engineers in their teams, which means that because it's a much smaller pool, we actually for the same level of skill, they end up getting paid more.
Yeah.
So when we're hiring at this level, and they're technically at that level, but they can get jobs at this level. So we can't compete on that on that
because
equal level.
It's an allocation of resources thing. They're just putting a shitload more money into that sort of stuff.
They've got the money,
and they've got that money.
The spare resources.
It's like scarcity versus abundance in a way.
And largely it is. I think that's like something that a lot of people try and shy away from. But the reality is that there aren't enough female engineering IT graduates.
So we're trying to fix that long term. Like we work with girls' schools and we've got programs. Like we have a vision there.
And
but
it's a long
you've got a
game.
need right now. That's right.
And it's a long game. So well done for doing that. But you also may not see the fruits of that anytime.
No, I'll probably have
retired
on an island somewhere.
Finish the game.
But and so what you've actually got to start thinking about, what can you offer these people that they won't be able to get at a big organisation. And fundamentally, the big thing that smaller organisations can offer other ones is ownership over their product and their work, and saying, we don't care what you do. This is just what we want to see done. How you do that and how you allocate your resources within all of that is actually what it comes down to.
Yeah.
We can't offer you the same amount of money, but you'll have a better time here by doing the work that you actually want to do rather than dealing with the internal bureaucracy of a really large company.
I mean, we actually have to offer that to everyone anyway.
You do. Yeah.
Because I mean, the big guys, the big mining companies, the big tech companies, they're paying double what we pay.
Of course.
But I guess, I'm going to take an even more practical approach. So you get a group of women, you get your target market in a room and say, what would it take to get you or your peers to work
I think that's
here?
right. Yep.
Ask them, because otherwise what we're all doing here is going, well, I know what they want. I don't know what they want. I'm not a bloody programmer.
Yeah.
So, and I'm also not the...
But a lot of the a not insignificant amount of solutions come from literally just asking people, what do you want? And it's whether you like them or not. But it's the same with dealing with difficult staff. What do you want? And that might be you trying to get them to leave the organisation. But when you're trying to attract them to the organisation, it's actually one of those things that what actually would help you engage with us, because at the moment what you've tried may not be working, and it's same old thing, which is you keep on trying the same thing, it doesn't work. But if you get there, if you engage substantively with people and ask them to say, we respect your opinion, know what's going on, that's what you're asking them, and you do it in that sort of way, you will actually start to get some different answers than what you normally have.
So I like the way, from our previous podcast episode, Michelle, I really like how you frame diversity, because you come at it from a profit perspective, which really speaks to me as a business owner.
All commercial.
Yeah. The point of hiring women and having a more diverse workforce usually means you'll be able to speak to a larger customer base and actually
make more money,
increase your revenue, right?
Yep.
So is that how you'll solve diversity? profit.
That gets me in the door to talk to talk
right.
to CEOs
Yeah.
and boards and executives. Go, how would you like to be 27% more profitable
like,
than your nearest
no,
competitor?
thanks.
People go,
yeah. Do you like money?
come on in.
do you like
What's
being?
the secret? Hire
Yeah.
more women.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and I was with a group this morning, all male, taking them through a bit of a session, and someone said, about the business case. I said, I'm not doing the business case for you. I said, you've seen
Hire
me
some
for the
people to
last
figure
4
it out,
years
right?
in
That's
your
the whole point.
organisation. I've talked to you about the business case 4 years ago. It is proven. It is done. If you want it, go and find it yourself.
Did they already have women on staff that they just didn't bother sending it to you because they thought they wouldn't learn anything?
No, this was me engaging.
So they were still men only.
male allies who are part of the solution to closing the leadership gender gap in this particular organisation.
So how does a cis white male be an ally without coming across as paternalistic or disingenuous?
Yeah, but I'm just a gay white man from Perth, middle class life and stuff like that. Where I started in all of this is, you just sit there, you read, you listen, and you actually start to understand what the issues are. You don't just go in there and say, gender equality is an issue, everyone.
News
I've
solved it.
No, I haven't solved it, but I've figured it out. It's a problem. You don't go in there and say that. And that is something that does happen.
Okay.
And, you get someone who literally walks into a room and says, we've got to deal with this. Yeah, duh. But you don't need to tell us that's the issue. You need to actually start thinking the next step, which is the solutions and things like that. So the first thing to actually do is to actually start thinking, read the evidence that's out there, and it's massive. There's a huge amount that's there, but actually start thinking a little bit like, are you interested in the economics of it? Are you interested in the marketing aspect of it? Whatever it is. And you start from there, and you start listening to the women around you and their experiences within that workplace, your immediate workplace, but also their lives generally. Listen to your mother, listen to your sister, all of these sort of things, and to see
what if they're like one of those self-hating women?
That say like what?
Well, that's a related issue, because why are they like that?
Yeah.
Listen to why they're like that, because there'll be a bucket load of reasons. I'm not going to go into
usually their dad, right?
Well, I don't know.
No.
Just society.
There are as many women
Fox
as there
News.
are. There are as many different areas for improvement. But Conrad's right. Listen, but do the work first. I find it really burdensome, as does my best friend, and we're in business together around cultural diversity. Both of us find it really burdensome to be asked about, so what's wrong with women? What do we need to?
What do we need
how
to
do we?
now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Can you tell us the answer?
It's women's problem.
Can you tell us the answer? What we
Women's
need to
faults.
do?
If there
And
was
then-
a silver bullet for all of this sort of stuff,
We'd
it
have
would have
done it,
been
right?
packaged up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It would that's why this sort of stuff
Deloitte
is so
would
complex.
sell it as a
Exactly.
It's a software
and
service.
and you get a consultant for however long it takes. It just doesn't exist. It is context specific. And so you've actually got to understand what you're talking about. You've got to listen to the people that are impacted by it, and you've actually got to start thinking and fleshing out solutions that might work. Try them. Not all of them will work. That's fine. Rarely does everything work out perfectly. It's try and fail, and through that you move forward slowly.
What do you think of paternity leave being only 2 weeks?
It's shit.
I agree. Why? So that just immediately says to me, or reinforces that child rearing is gendered. So child rearing is a woman's job.
Yeah.
Good piece of advice I got very early in my career, Michelle. Childbirth is gendered at this point, but child rearing is not. That was the first piece of advice. The second was choose your partner wisely and have the conversation.
Because if we had a society that said both parents take time off and spend the first 6 months with their child, then employers wouldn't have that thing hanging over them that if they hire a woman, there's a good chance she'll be gone for 6 months to a year, right?
My father took parental leave for my 2 older brothers back in the 80s. Dad was a tradie at the time. He's Greek. All of these factors should have limited him even getting anywhere near that decision, but he did it. And then when I came along, I'm a little bit younger than my brothers, he worked what we now call flexible working to be home. Like, it's actually, like, if you want to do it, you will do it. And you will find a way to make it work. But like at the same time, like the actual structures that exist for this sort of stuff are just awful. And so there is an onus that sits on organisations to enable that. But then at the same time, there's some bigger policy issues that will drive that.
It feels like a government thing to me.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I think
business is leading government now. We're not seeing policy reform in any material way. So, but back to the paternity leave. What also happens is that men like your dad, Conrad, even today, are punished from a career perspective for asking to work in a different way than dad and granddad did. So this is the flip side of gender inequality. Men are also trapped in this nasty little box that says you've got to work like a demon, 80 hours a week, be the breadwinner, blah, 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 retire, drop dead from stress.
And if you don't, you're not a real man.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is... policy reform, yes. In a perfect world, we would have... governments, legislators who would be saying this is the way our society is going to run. I don't think we've even got the systems of government and that to set that up, or the courage or the bravery.
I actually just simply don't think that there's a vision there for it. And so, before we even get to that stuff, people are kind of like, whoa, why would we even consider that? So yeah, it's a long way off, and it is up to I think that the role of business is growing because of government inaction and lack of vision, and it's across the board. Parental leave policy is actually really complex. It's not just as easy as changing one thing. But yeah, so that's where it sits.
So how do we get all women to strike? Not the women who work for our organisation.
They've got They've got nothing to worry about.
That's right.
Well, there were a great many of us who took to the streets on the 15th
Actually, how do we go back to the 1960s? Burning the bras.
That never happened.
No, it's just it's a
myth.
It is a myth.
Used to me. Fun myth, though.
It is a fun myth.
As a lifelong feminist and someone who arguably is now entering her, third wave of feminism. I don't know. I get confused with the waves. But anyway, what I'm seeing now is, and again, it's a little bit of it's a gross generalisation, is a rising up of women of all ages again, particularly, it's not just in Australia, because we've seen the same thing happen in the US, to say, in hashtag enough is enough. And
time's up, all that kind of stuff.
But, it certainly... in Australia, I marched for the first time ever in my life. I've never been on a march before because
I wouldn't have picked that.
I know lots of people said, "Really, Redfern? You're like that?" I'm like, no, because I had never had something that was particularly
never in the black bloc with the other clubs. I'm just not going to admit it on camera, right?
No, I just have not done it. I advocate and agitate in different ways.
Agitate.
I was so absolutely fed up and furious, and this thing grew, and I just thought, I feel so powerless about the treatment of women across Australia that there's actually, I can't find any other way to vent my fury in a way where I felt safe, but also that it was going to have meaning.
I mean, there was a rape in our capital, in our parliament, federal parliament. I mean, that's actually pretty fucking insane when you think about it.
Yes, there was, and yes, that garnered a lot of attention. But you know what else I'll say is there are Aboriginal women raped, assaulted and incarcerated at a rate that is so disproportionate to their population in Australia that it is criminal, but that doesn't get the attention of legislators. So I think the Brittany Higgins matter brought a whole bunch of stuff to the surface. But, Brittany's me 30 years ago, white, educated, privileged, and I do not condone, her experience is awful. But I also want to see the experiences every single day that don't make the news because it's not, for whatever reason, be make people as furious. You know, we just have to get serious about reconciliation. We just have to get serious about intersectionality and saying, women don't have a value based on where they are what they look like, what their cultural heritage is, etc. All women need that. All women need that outcry.
Isn't that part of the problem? One death is a tragedy, 1,000 deaths is a statistic. And don't you need that? I can't remember her name. The Black American woman who sat in the front of the bus.
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks, thank you. Don't you need a Rosa Parks there, a hero story that's
you
not
do.
what,
You do. And people identify with individuals, not movements.
Yeah.
And so that's why, people know more CEO names now. And there's all of that sort of stuff. It's a PR and marketing sort of thing. That is what it comes down to.
But I think the hero's journey is is what people pay attention to, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, but it is about seeing someone go through these sort of things and thinking, it's about identifying.
Empathy.
Yeah, seeing yourself there. And that's what it is.
I live in a very safe bubble. Yeah. Just quickly, I live in a very safe bubble and I don't see any of this stuff. So how do you fix that?
It's a crisis thing. That people didn't realize that this was actually going on, that these issues were so systemic that it was even in Parliament. I've heard stories very similar in lots of organisations, far too many organisations. And so it's just that this was the people's house. These people work for us, and this is what happened there. And it shocked people in a way unlike ever before. So it is that sort of thing that, it's a shock factor matters. It gets people thinking that this is actually a crisis. And the organisations that I've worked with that have made the biggest change have acted on crisis. So that's why I make that point.
But what you can do, Alex, in your safe world, your privileged world, which is not... I'm not saying privilege as in you're privileged, you bastard.
Oh, no, I am privileged.
As am I.
I would prefer more people in my bubble.
You've got to do the work. So let's find out. And the simple work is, and I gave this advice to a CEO of a football club not 2 months ago, diversify your social media feed. How many women of colour, Asian women, how many different people do you follow on social media and actively seek out alternate views, lifestyles and experiences of your own, because that's doing the work.
What's your call to action for anyone listening to this?
Look at the evidence. Just literally look at the data and the evidence. Start there and start thinking about why you think that it doesn't matter when the raw numbers... Every statistic is there's an individual on the other side of that. And that's where you've actually got to start your thinking.
So read the stories.
Read the statistics and then find the story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Statistics are stories.
So my strategy around that is I typically dinosaur quarantine. But if that person really is really genuinely interested, and I'm not convinced they are, they're really genuinely interested in making change, I want them to do the work. I want them to read, and then and only then have a very well-curated, well-informed conversation.
Let's say they're lazy.
Yeah, how would you...
What movie should they watch? So there's no obvious movie or TV show that comes to mind to represent...
No, there isn't. But there is a pretty good podcast out there that's been running for quite a while. It's from a woman in New York called Ashley Milne-Tite. It's called The Broad Experience, and it's focused on different women and different issues focused around gender equality, and it's quite helpful. So if you are lazy, type The Broad Experience into Apple Podcasts and stuff like that.
And another podcast is by Kimberly Crenshaw, who actually coined the phrase or the term intersectionality, and she has a podcast called This Is Us. And I've got to tell you that the 2 episodes around the storming of the Capitol building are hugely confronting listening for someone who wasn't there, white, privileged, yada, yada. But it's, that they are good pieces of media to listen to start understanding and hopefully generating a bit of that, empathetic response.
And also, actually, there's a Netflix show called, I think it's Athlete A, which is all about the gymnastics stuff in America. Well, actually, there's a whole bunch of gymnastics stuff in Australia, and it's just come through a Human Rights Commission report, and the gymnastics bodies are having to act very quickly about all of this sort of stuff because they've done nothing for a long time. So, there is actually a lot out there that's quite, easy to engage with. And I think Athlete A only goes for an hour or an hour and a half. It's actually quite easy.
It is.
Great. There you go, listeners or viewers. Watch Athlete A on Netflix. You heard it here. Yeah. All right. I think we solved the
problem.
There we go.
Solved diversity.
Pack her up.
There you go, Deloitte's. You just have to put this episode into a package and sell it to your clients.
Oh my God. Let's not.
Thank you for your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.